One of the great pleasures that I enjoy in Bali is buying little snacks from the side of the road. And half the time, they were homemade in somebody's kitchen. And a quarter of the time, it's some teenager selling them. And they're always different. And I can just walk right up to them, pull out my wallet, have a look at what they've made, negotiate a deal, and have a nice snack. I love that. I found out not too long ago that in Midway, Georgia, 3 little girls, led by a Christy Dixon, who was 14 years old, had their lemonade stand shut down by the police because they were violating a whole list of rules and regulations and laws, and they were set up that lemonade stand on their own damn property. I cannot communicate to you how angry that makes me as an American. And it's not just in the United States that sort of thing happens. What does it teach those girls? In the Balinese example, they learn self-sufficiency. They learn how to think creatively. They learn how to be entrepreneurs. They learn the value of earning your own money. Those 3 girls in America, what did they learn? And they're not the only ones. A Bobby Nelson in Cordville, Iowa, along with his girlfriend, Abigail Kirstinger, had their lemonade stand shut down after being open for a few hours by the police, who came and threatened them. In the New York suburb, there's a guy named Andrew DeMarkey, a 13-year-old, and Kevin Graff, his buddy. They were selling cupcakes, for Christ's sake, on their own property. I've been in Indonesia for 32 years, living right here on the island of Bali. My name is Jack Blaylock. I'm originally from Hawaii. I'm an entrepreneur. I was in the handicraft export and manufacturing business for over 20 years. Along with 3 partners, we developed an export company right here in Bali in a factory. We shipped product to 27 countries. We employed 1,200 Indonesians. And we won an award from President Suharto for our contribution to the cottage industry. Our contribution to the cottage industry was such that we bought components from cottage industry businesses all over the island, and then added value to those components by turning them into wind chimes, which was my main, most successful product. But in the 32 years I've been here, I've also been very fortunate to become deeply integrated into Balinese culture. I have a Balinese family that has put me through a spiritual and religious ritual to make me their spiritually adopted son. I pray with them, I live with them when I'm not in Ubud, I go back and forth. When I'm living with them in a little farming village of 80 families about an hour-and-a-half drive from here, my contribution to the family to pay for my room and board is I wash the dishes mostly. I help them plant rice, I feed the cows, I do whatever needs to be done. Because of that, I have been made an honorary member of a Balinese tribal clan. The name of that clan is Bandesa Manik Mas. It's an ancestral clan of 15,000 families. And these 15,000 families trace themselves back to a common husband and wife that lived in Bali 1,000 years ago. The clan is spread out all over the island. We got a little logo. Every once in a while we'll meet another from the clan and recognize them by the logo they're wearing. I have to confess I'm quite proud of that. But I'm happy about it because it's given me insight into the Balinese psyche and the Balinese nature. I've stayed here all this time because I have more freedom and liberty in this environment than I have anywhere in the United States. I have learned that creative problem solving is one of the most important evolutionary gifts we have. It's in every one of us. We evolve by solving our problems. Statism tries to kill it. Rules and regulations are designed to kill our creative thinking. The purpose of my talk is to give you examples of day-to-day freedoms the residents of Bali and all of Indonesia have that characterize what life may be like in a free society and show how government rules and regulations kill your sense of creativity. Now, I know that many of you in the audience are from countries who already enjoy those type of freedoms. So I've kind of got two sets of people here. I've got those who live in countries that deny you those sorts of freedoms, and I've got some of you, you are already accustomed to those sorts of freedoms, like being able to set up your lemonade stand anywhere you want to. For those who are accustomed to these types of freedoms, I would like to suggest to you that the next time you complain about corruption, for example, to consider this. In Jakarta, a couple of years ago, the chief of police came out and says, okay, by golly, from now on, we are not going to sell licenses or permits. You're going to have to follow the proper procedure. Our police officers will not be allowed to take a traffic bribe when you run a red light or go too fast. We're going to stick by the rule because we're tired of hearing you complain about corruption. That lasted about 3 weeks. And the very members of society who were complaining about corruption being so bad now begged for it to come back because they preferred to, when they got stopped for speeding, and this is the first of my examples, they get stopped by speeding, policeman comes over. Now, according to the rule of the law, he's got to do what they do in Canada or Australia. He's got to write them a ticket, and they got to go to court, and they got to plead whether they're innocent or guilty, and they got to pay a fine, and that's very time-consuming. Their other choice is they can say to the police officer, gee, isn't there some other way we can handle this? Come on. And the police officer is waiting for you to say that. And he says, well, sure, what do you got in mind? And you hand him, the going rate right now in Bali is about 50,000 Indonesian rupiahs, that's $4.50. Now, I understand, I am not going to argue today that a corrupt society is a superior society. That is not what I'm trying to say. Corruption on the bigger level here causes many, many thousands of people to suffer. It has made a mockery of the justice system. I'm not here to defend Indonesia as a political or economic system. I'm just here to give you examples of a de facto freedom and liberty that we get in a country that supposedly has rule of law, but it claims to have rule of law, but in effect has no rule of law. Corruption is one of the reasons I can enjoy that de facto freedom and liberty. But it's not the only one. But I'm going to give you another example of how the ability to bribe is giving you a bit of freedom and liberty. And that is the ability to diagnose yourself when you have an illness and treat yourself, no matter what that may be. You could theoretically, although I've never heard of anybody doing it, you could theoretically perform a heart operation on yourself in this country. Because the pharmacies that supply the drugs a surgeon would need for a heart operation will sell them to you. And the medical supply house that provides the surgical instruments that you need for a heart operation, they're happy to sell those things to you. Now, there is a law forbidding them to do that. but they do it anyway because the profit they get from selling to any old person more than covers the bribe they have to pay when they get caught every now and then for doing such. I have done this myself. 3 years ago, I had a lung infection that I couldn't figure out. I had a cough and some other symptoms, and I started Googling it. And it took a while, but eventually, I was pretty sure I figured out what I had. It wasn't a normal pneumonia or a bacterial infection or anything. It turns out, according to reading the symptoms and carefully reading this study and that study, I had a somewhat rare fungal infection in my lungs. So then I Googled more and I found the drug that is normally prescribed for that. So I drove myself down to the pharmacy. It's about a 15-minute drive from here. And I ordered that drug, and it came, and I self-medicated myself, and I got better, and I healed myself. Now, try doing that in some of your all's countries, right? You wouldn't be able to. Now, the fact that I could do it doesn't mean you have to do it that way. Any Indonesian in this country who prefers not to take the chance on doing it themselves and goes to a doctor and gets diagnosed and then gets a prescription written is still free to do that. My freedom to treat myself and buy my own medicine does not in any way interfere with their right to go get diagnosed and treat themselves. But I felt such a sense of pride that I was able to do that. I felt like I was a doctor. And I was the prime beneficiary. I got better. Another reason why you have a de facto freedom here is there's just plain old not as many regulations. Not as many. The lemonade stand is one example that I gave earlier, but another one is I invite you, as you're walking around Bali while you're here, to look for retail businesses on motorbikes. When you see one, you're going to love it. My favorite one is the potted plant salesman. What he's done is, I'm just going to guess, but in most cases, here's a guy who knows a lot about plants. Maybe it's his hobby. And he knows how to clone and cut and take cuttings and plant seeds and, he would love to have a lawn and garden shop, but he doesn't have the capital for that. All he's got is a motorbike and his hobby. So he buys a few plastic pots and he makes some plants and he grows them in his backyard and he hand makes a wooden frame that he fits over his motors. I mean, he is breaking all kinds of regulations where I come from, okay? He makes a frame, he puts it on his motorbike, he fills the thing with potted plants, and when he's driving down the road, he looks like a forest. Going down the road, like you can see his eyes poking out of the hole in the forest. It's like a traveling forest. Well, if any of you see the potted plant guy while you're here going down the road, I guarantee you it's going to make you smile. It's going to brighten your day. Wouldn't you think that experience of having your day brightened by seeing a guy who was that clever to put a forest on wheels, wouldn't you think that the pure joy of seeing that would make up somewhat from the risk he is putting others at? I think so. I think so. And here, that risk that you would think maybe he's putting others at because he can't see as well as he's supposed to, and all of that. Well, because the society here is accustomed to things like that, they know to watch out and be careful for it. And so the risk is actually much lower here than it would be if I just arbitrarily went and did that in Arkansas somewhere. Another reason why we have this de facto freedom is the authorities very often completely willing to let society figure it out on their own. And I'm going to give you examples of that. And this is true even if you're breaking the law. Because their way of looking at it is, well, that group of people are technically breaking the law. They're doing something that we otherwise would have to be doing ourselves, so let them go ahead and do it. And my favorite example of this is at rush hour down in the big city of Denpasar. There's several 4-laned roads where you got 2 lanes going this way, and you got 2 lanes going this way. Now, in many places in the world, in many civilized countries in the world, at about 4:15 in the afternoon, the civil servants come out there with their orange cones, and they turn that 2-lane this way, 2-lane that way road into a 3 lanes that way and a 1 lane this way to take care of rush hour. Because generally at rush hour, everybody's kind of going in the same direction. But they don't do that here because society just takes it into their own hands. What happens here is at any time of day, when it appears to the people on the road that the traffic would flow way better if we would take over one of the 2 lanes of the other guys going that other way. If it appears to everybody that, yeah, that would work better, it happens spontaneously and automatically. They just take over the 3rd lane. It's usually one person who kind of breaks the ice, right? One person breaks the ice, and somebody else sees them, and they join in. Somebody else sees them. And pretty soon you got 3 lanes going this way and 1 lane going this way for about as long as you need that to happen. It may be 10 minutes, it may be an hour, it may be 2 hours. How much more efficient is that than when the government does it? They got to pay for a frickin' study, okay? And then they got to decide that, no, really, the ideal time is at 4:09 every day, and it's got to last until 5:22, or whatever it may be. The way it works here is they just trust you to work it out on your own. And other examples of this are in the village that I live in. Were somebody to commit a crime, and let's say it got reported to the police. If the police show up, and the elders of the village, called the Banjar, you got to be a married man and then you're a member of the Banjar. If Banjar representatives came out onto the road and met the police and told the police, sorry, thank you for coming, but we're going to handle this in our own way, thank you. The village will take care of this crime. Most of the time, the police will back down and they'll go back to their police station. Yep. I know, that guy's like somebody from America, for example, that is just absolutely incomprehensible. It happens here all the time. Now, it doesn't happen with every crime, but it certainly does with petty crimes, because the police are thinking, well, there's no real incentive for us to get involved with this. It's a poor little village crime. They don't have enough money to get us a big payoff. You know? And they want to handle it themselves. We can go back to playing ping pong in our office, or, you know, friending our Facebook friends. And that's what happens. Again, I'm not arguing that this is the ideal way to enjoy freedom and liberty. Far from it. But I'm trying to impress upon you that freedom and liberty really does work the way we all theorize it's supposed to be. And small-scale examples that I see all the time. When you're in an environment like this, where you have so many day-to-day little freedoms, what it does for you is it unleashes the power of your creative mind. The freer you feel, the more creative you become. And everybody values the ability to think creatively. Not just artists. Thinking creatively is problem solving. Creative problem solving is one of our most important evolutionary gifts that governments try to kill. They don't just regulate your freedom, they regulate your ability to think creatively, and they do this by inculcating within you an artificial set of boundary lines beyond which your creative problem-solving talents must not pass. These boundaries become fixtures in your subconscious mind that then prohibit your reservoir of creative ideas and the problem-solving solutions from presenting themselves to your conscious mind. In other words, we all have all kinds of great creative ideas in the back of our head, but most of the time we don't even let them enter our consciousness because we're already pre-programmed to know that, well, you can't do it even if you did get the idea, so don't have the idea in the first place, and it never bubbles up into your mind. I first started putting all this together on my first year here in Bali. I went in with a good friend of mine to the Burger King that had just opened. And they had a big sign up that said, "Have it your way." And I thought, I'd kind of like to do that for real this time. So we get up to the counter and there's no line, right? This is kind of relatively empty. It's not at a normal feeding time. And we asked the cashier, this friend of mine, listen, says, I can do it my way. So, can I really do it my way? I mean, I want to go behind there and make my own burger. Can I do that and put whatever I want on it? Now, I know for sure that if I did that in Hawaii, where I'm from, okay, the cashier would go, what do you mean, sir? Let me go back there and make my own burger. It says I can do it my way, Can I go flip it and get my robe and can I make my own french fries too? Now, I know in Hawaii, it's very likely that that cashier is going to go, wait a minute, sir, and then she's going to go find her supervisor, right? Already shaking in her boots, okay? And she's going to go say, "Oh man, we got a really weird dude here, okay? He wants to come back and make his own way." Right? I mean, they may even call 911. I mean, seriously. Nobody ever does that in a civilized country. You don't even get the idea, do you? Why would you? Because you already know you can't do that sort of thing. But what happened to us is the cashier looks at us and goes, well, I don't know. Let me ask. So she calls her supervisor over, and the supervisor comes over and he says, "Really? You want to do that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Cool, come on over." So he fixes us up in a uniform, and he puts our little Burger King hats on us, and he teaches us how to make french fries, and he teaches us how to make our own burger, and by the time we're in the middle of it, all of the patrons in Burger King were laughing their fool heads off, and the staff were having a good time, and the supervisor felt so proud of himself that we appreciated that everybody that were working in there felt appreciated and loved, and what is wrong with that? I am angry that I can't go back home and do something like that. There's nothing wrong with thinking that way. I'm going to check the time. Oh, forgot to start me clock. Has anybody got an approximate idea of?
It's 5:20 now.
5:20 now?
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes.
I got about 10 minutes more. Okay. Well, then I'll briefly go through. When I talk this way to those who come from a country does have a rule of law, the common objections I get are, like, for example, this. see, I don't have the confidence to do something like that, to when I get in a traffic accident, the person that I hit, I mean, I'm supposed to call the cops and give them my insurance card and that's it. You know, here, you get in a traffic accident, and both parties get out and they negotiate a deal between them, and if they need help determining who was wrong, they call on the passersby as witnesses, and the passersby already know they're maybe going to be called as witnesses, so when they witness a traffic accident, they all stop and wait and see if anybody needs a witness, and normally it all gets sorted out without calling the police. But friends and relatives of mine back in the States would say to me, they'd say, well, I don't have the confidence for something like that. And I'd say, well, doesn't that kind of prove my point? And I say to them, would you like to have that kind of confidence? Look what the government has done to you. Instead of teaching you self-confidence, instead of teaching you interpersonal skills of dealing with your fellow man in times of a situation or a problem or a crisis, instead of teaching you that, it makes you meek and timid and unable to negotiate your way out of difficulties because you're now programmed to turn it over to daddy. Another objection I hear is, oh, you can't do that sort of thing, it's dangerous. Hi.
It's not safe.
It's not safe.
It's a kindergarten.
Well, if I say to them, you know, in a free society, if you really don't think something is safe, the market will provide you a mechanism for doing it in a way that you feel safe. The fact that I want to take a risk is not going to interfere with that. The other argument is, I've heard this, the burden to society argument. I love this one. It goes like this. Well, if we let large groups of people ride in the back of an open pickup truck, that's very common here, you're going to see it every day. Can't do it in the US, you see it every day here. Right? And they fall out and hurt themselves, they will be a burden to society because while they recover, we have to pay them disability, medical bills, unemployment, and on and on and on and on. And I don't think I need to offer any rebuttal to that stupid argument to a group of libertarians. You all kind of know what the answer to that is. We don't think there should be government help of that sort to begin with. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's wrong for libertarians to use burden on society to argue against the government stealing for me, but it's okay for you all to use the same argument to take away my right to ride in a pickup truck in the back if I want to. I would like to save some time for questions. Yeah, so maybe we can get started now. Anything else? Yes, Arun.
Yeah, because I can identify with most of the stories that you narrated about Bali because I see it daily in India.
Yes.
So the question is, I think there are two. There is a cost. And the cost I think is very insidious. It undermines the very basis of rule of law because then it becomes a negotiation for any piece of crime, including murder and rape. It's a negotiation, and the other side of that is that the systems that are supposed to work under the rule of law will not work because they know the other route is much more attractive to everyone concerned, including the police.
Yes.
Yeah, so that means we have disrupted the very basis of rule of law. And secondly, and which is probably the more immediate one, that as and when Indonesia and Bali and India and many others reach the economic levels of some of your countries, as Leon said, the state and the society would actually ensure that this kind of expansion of law and the carve of safety and all the others get imposed. Because if we have not grasped the essence of how the rule of law is going to function, then we are short-circuiting it both ways.
Sure.
And that, I think, is a very heavy burden.
Well, as I said in the beginning, my talk was not to defend the Indonesian system the way it is currently functioning. It is completely dysfunctional. Anybody will tell you that. My point was that for a person like myself, from my upbringing and living in the United States for the first 23 years of my life, although this is not a perfect example of having more economic freedom and freedom to move within my environment and my day-to-day freedoms, at least it gives me a taste of it. And it was valuable to me because it was that taste of these little freedoms that turned me from a liberal socialist democrat into first a libertarian, and now I'm an anarcho-capitalist. And the rest of your objections, I think, would turn into a discussion of the virtues between libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism, and I don't think we have the time for that, but I'll happily engage you in that later.
I have time too.
Anybody else? Yes?
If economic activity really were freer here than in a country like the United States, then I would expect this place would have a higher standard of living. So I am suspecting that maybe the government will come down on a business that gets big. Like the man who makes a living with potted plants apparently isn't competing with Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
With a chain and efficient operation. So I think if his business got bigger, he would meet the government in a way that would shut him down, I suppose, because there aren't such stores that I've seen.
You are absolutely correct about that. I can cite many examples of that. And that's why, as I said to Varun just now, I was not defending the overall system here. I was merely making a point that this is an environment within which you can personally, on a day-to-day level, experience some types of freedoms that you probably haven't experienced before. And apologize to those like Varun who are from those countries that already have those day-to-day experiences. I was under the impression that most of the participants here would have been from developed Western countries, where you don't get to experience these type of things. But you're completely right. Yep. Yes?
Do you, under your impression, do you believe that the people here value the freedom that you describe as much as you, or do they take it for granted? Or is it because you come from a different upbringing that only you notice the freedom is so valuable and important?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that they certainly value the freedom to make something with their own two hands and sell it and enjoy a profit without anybody interfering with that. But I will then say that the average education level and understanding of the bigger picture for the very people that I've been describing is so, I hate to use this word, but unsophisticated, that they don't really sit there and moose over these philosophical points and ideas like we all do. I'm just going to guess that yes, they certainly do value that, but they do take it for granted and they don't think about it to the depth of even your question.
Adding to that, do they sort of, aspire for that implementation of rule of law like in developed countries? Do they think that it would make Indonesia a better society?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. If you ask them in the right way, they're going to say, oh yeah, they're tired of corruption. They hate the fact that when a police officer stops them, they have to pay that guy money. But, as per the example I gave earlier, when the police department actually tried that, and really did make you take a ticket and go to court, they hated that even worse. And so I am arguing that at least, you know, the right to negotiate your fate with respect to a traffic ticket, they have clearly demonstrated by their own actions they value that. Barun's special case there of on a bigger level, let's say you killed my brother and you negotiate your way out of that, well, that's very valid.
Not just that special case, Indonesia has been in the news lately because of the death sentence on drug peddlers.
Oh yeah, sure.
And I think those, and you can actually see how that kind of logic plays out, not just at the government level. We can explain away and rationalize the government's logic for undertaking that kind of exercise. But I'm pretty sure a lot of the elite and the powerful in Indonesia use that precisely because they can exercise similar power elsewhere.
Oh yes, sure, you're right. My personal solution to that is I would like to see everything negotiable, even more extreme than you're suggesting, but via organizations such as Stefan Molyneux's dispute resolution organizations, or David Friedman back there has suggested similar mechanisms for handling that sort of thing. But again, we could go on for some time about this, and I welcome doing that with you later. Anybody else? Yes, Fergus.
Yes, nice, very nice example. I think it's something that we have to think about much more than we heard from you. The first speaker here, the Indonesian guy from Jakarta, noticed at the end of his presentation that Indonesia is the happiest country in the world. So my question is that these freedoms that you just described result of that they have that love in between themselves, or is it just opposite? I mean, if these laws would be implemented until the very end, would the happiness and love disappear in between the society?
My personal opinion is yes, that would disappear. Yes. Again, I point to that case where the chief of police forced all the cops to be honest. He was expecting that would go on for months and months. It didn't last more than 2 weeks. But that is a very good question. I have, my temptation is to answer you according to my philosophy, which is more freedom is a good thing. Yes?
Oh, it's just being the timekeeper. I have to...
Ah, okay. All right, so I guess that wraps it up. Thank you very much. I have some homemade little... If anybody would like to contact me or know more about me, you can pick one of these up on the table. I'm available for speaking. Yes, one more listening.
One more question.
Yes.
There is another thing, I don't know whether it exists in Indonesia or not, but in Pakistan it does exist. It is far more entrenched in Pakistan, and that is statist thinking. People don't think from their own point of view, from their personal point of view, from their family's point of view. If you ask them about their own point of view, if you ask about their own welfare, own well-being, they don't mind it. But if you ask them that there should be low taxes, they will say that, then how will the state run? How will the state doing this? How will the state doing that? So what about this? What is your view? How do you think that status thinking how can be countered? Because people actually believe that they represent the state, and most of the people in Pakistan believe that.
Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what the question itself was.
No, it's not a question. I just wanted to know your view about this.
About what the role of the state should be?
No, about what to do about the status thinking.
Status thinking.
Status, yeah.
Well, I'm not a statist myself. How to win the hearts of others? Boy.
What really determines whether or not you're a statist is if you view yourself as being part of the government. If you see yourself as the government as being you, and otherwise you see the market as yourself, then you're
He's
not.
acting out.
That's no issue,
Your
but when
experience.
majority of the people think like a statist person, when they think that they themselves represent the state.
Okay, I'm sorry to go over time there, and anybody wants to...
That's a very unique situation.
All right, I'm sorry to go over time. Anybody wants to leave, please do. But I really want to answer you now. Okay, how I feel about that, and it's hard for me to say this, but living in a tribal society, as I have for 31 years now, I hate to say this, but my opinion is the average person is not at all interested in freedom and liberty. Thank you. They don't want it. They want to be status. They could experience the freedom that I'm talking about. You could hand it to them on a frickin' platter. You could force them into it for a week, and at the end of that week you could say, "Didn't you love that?" And most of them are going to say no. And I am saying this from my experience of being an employer of 1,200 people. Every opportunity I had to give them more freedom and liberty by taking a risk, they turned down every single time. And I hate to say that, but that's just the way it is. I'd like to hear other people's opinions about that.
I think in Indonesia, I don't just in Indonesia, I think what you were saying, it applies to Indonesia too.
Yes, I think, yeah, I understand. You
Yeah, two presidents in Indonesia struggled to deal with the fuel subsidy.
Yeah.
Because most people seem quite concerned that the fuel subsidy should continue irrespective of its impact. So.
My experience of mankind is that they want a book of rules that are easy to understand, and are easy to memorize, and then they want to guarantee that if they follow that book of rules on the 15th and the 30th of every month, they're going to get X amount of currency, and that's what they want. And you can come along no matter how pure and beautiful and spiritual and morally proper and ethical your ideas are for their life being better. They don't want to hear it because they have their security and that's what they want. And the bigger problems, they like the idea that it's been handed over to daddy. That makes me sadder even than the lemonade, the girls that got busted for lemonade. It makes me sad.
I don't want to disrupt, but I've just been asked to tell everyone, if you would, bring your chairs with you when you come, and we're going to set up the chairs for the speed networking along the driveway coming in. So there's 2 tracks, and just set the chairs up opposing each other on each side of the track. Okay?
Thank you very much for coming.